Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yatra yatra dvijagavo Veda varnasrama kriya. Tam tam janapadam yata Sandipayata Vrishchala. Immediately go wherever there is good protection for the cows and Brahmins, and wherever the Vedas are studied in terms of the Varnashram principles. Set fire to those places and cut from the roots the trees there which are the source of life. The picture of a proper human civilization is indirectly described here. In a perfect human civilization, there must be a class of men fully trained as perfect brahmanas. Similarly, there must be kshatriyas to rule the country very nicely, according to the injunctions of the Shastras, and there must be Vaishyas who can protect the cows. The word gava indicates that cows should be given protection. Because the Vedic civilization is lost, cows are not protected, but instead indiscriminately killed in slaughterhouses. Such are the acts of demons. Therefore, this is a demoniac civilization. The Varnashram Dharma mentioned here is essential for human civilization. Unless there is a Brahmin to guide, a Kshatriya to rule perfectly, and a perfect Vaishya to produce food and protect the cows, how will people live possibly? It is impossible. Another point is that trees should also be given protection. During a lifetime, a tree should not be cut for industrial enterprises. In Kali Yuga, trees are indiscriminately and unnecessarily cut for industries, in particular for paper mills that manufacture a profuse quantity of paper for the publication of demoniac propaganda, nonsensical literature, huge quantities of newspapers, and many other paper products. This is a sign of a demoniac civilization. The cutting of trees is prohibited unless necessary for the service of Lord Krishna. Yagyartart kamanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana. Work done as a sacrifice by Vishnu must be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. But if the paper mills stop producing paper, one may argue, how can our ISKCON literature be published? The answer is the paper mills should manufacture paper only for the publication of ISKCON literature, because ISKCON literature is published for the service of Lord Vishnu. This literature clarifies our relationship with Lord Vishnu, and therefore the publication of ISKCON literature is the performance of yajna. Yagyartart kamanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana. Yajna must be performed as indicated by the superior authorities. The cutting of trees simply to manufacture paper for the publication of unwanted literature is the greatest sinful act. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Taksur Unmulatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Greetings from Brooklyn. How ironic to read this purport in Brooklyn about trees when the most famous book ever written about Brooklyn is called The Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Like it's a big deal. So probably according to this purport, the whole city was built on sin, clearing all the nice trees. I think some of you may be on my audio sangha on Sunday, but you know, Nisringa Chaturdashi, and I was upstate. We had 2 festivals. On Friday, Rabindra Sri Prabhu, they had an abhishek, really well done by Shraddha, a really well done abhishek for Lord Nisringadev. And you know, it's during the week, but at least 20 people came. And then on Saturday, in Satsvarup Maharaj's place, we had another Nisringa Chaturdashi with a big feast. And it's always nice to get his association with Rabindra Sri Prabhu. We all 3 spoke, and Ram Roy was there to do kirtan. So I think one of the themes, Satsvarup Maharaj spoke about it, and I spoke about it, is that this is one of the most comprehensive stories in the Bhagavatam. I'm seeing it, you know, it goes over 600 pages. 10 chapters. So there's really so much in here. And one thing I highlighted is that how many key verses in our Vaishnav canon, how many key verses come from these teachings, including the verse with the longest purport in the Bhagavatam, which is Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, which is Prahlad's answer to his father when he said, what did your teachers, what did you learn from your teachers today? Satsvarup Maharaj made a very nice point, which I don't remember ever hearing before, that when he heard that, he was thinking what his teacher, he wasn't thinking his demoniac Sunday and Amarka, his demoniac school teachers were his teachers. He was thinking Narada Muni was his teacher. So he told his father. He was just Vaishnava is very, very simple and fearless and has so much faith in truth and Dharma that Dharma will lead to auspiciousness, even if it means that following Dharma means to give up your life. I've often told the story about my mother's cousin who was a chaplain in the army and in World War II, and their ship got sunk. And they gave up their life preserves. They gave up everything for everyone. They put everybody else on the boats, and then people saw them going down arm in arm, singing the Psalms of David, how important truth was and Dharma. This was right, and we'll die for it. And auspiciousness will come, understanding that we're the soul. And real auspiciousness is the elevation of the soul. Anyway, he answered that, and the other verses, you know, are so key in this story, and what to speak of all the different stories. So I thought today and tomorrow I'm going to lecture on this. Maybe I'll start. I lectured on one verse from the first chapter, one lecture from the second chapter. And so many beautiful stories, but I'll just put it briefly into context, and then I want to discuss this verse, which is interesting because within this story, which describes the bhakti of Prahlad and the protection of Krishna and so many different philosophical points, also this chapter throws in a very important aspect of social philosophy. How society is connected to your spiritual life. I even wrote one article. Let's see if I ever get back here, but I'm conscious of that. I even wrote one article about 4 pillars of spiritual life, and how there was a famous, I think, sociologist named was Barry Schwartz. He wrote, he spoke on, I don't remember the article, but he was talking about how in school, he's a professor, how every couple of years he has to give 10% less homework because the people are so absorbed in finding a partner. It just absorbs their time. And when I read that, because I hear it through the Vedas, that these things were provided in a proper society. And I gave 4 pillars. People didn't have to worry about where they live. Today, people don't know where they're going to live. It takes a lot of time. And every time you move, it's kind of an economic hit every time you move. Where you think of, a person that in a particular society grows up, and the first thing, even when he grows up, he knows where he's going to live. Not only knows where he's going to live, but he has a house and a mortgage. And education was free. Today, you start without a house, and you start $200,000 in debt if you go to college. So just these things, where you're going to live, a system of finding a proper partner in life, a set path of occupation and employment, and a steady, solid, spiritual path and representatives where you can apply your faith. Then you worry about the problems of life. So also within the Bhagavatam, it not only describes the consciousness of bhakti and the consciousness of bhakti and the development of bhakti, but it also describes a setting, a social setting, by which, called Varnashram, a social setting, a social system to support that endeavor. And then it's expected that people with intelligence and realization, they take time-tested principles and they know how to apply it according to the circumstance properly. So, just to put the story in context briefly, and then we'll get to this point. Just get the story in context. It begins with the story of Vritrasura at the end of the 6th canto, where Vishnu supports Indra against Vritrasura, the demons, because he was a great devotee, but except the demons. So Maharaj Parikshit, who's listening to this and represents the person who's being educated to develop a frame of reference by which he can perfectly understand Krishna. The whole Bhagavatam is meant to understand Krishna. That's mentioned in the 9th chapter of the 2nd canto, that there are 10 subject matters. The first 9 are to help you understand the 10th. To have a proper frame of reference to understand a particular subject. We can just think of explaining what we know now in Krishna consciousness to a person from a culture and an upbringing and a status in society who has no frame of reference to understand it. How much would that person require in purification of heart and in elevation of knowledge and purification of intelligence before the things that we can understand when someone just says them, they can understand when people just say, how much is required? So how much is required for us to understand Krishna and Radha without misconception or prejudice or perversion even? So the Bhagavatam is giving us components of realization so that we can understand something. And I often reflect in my life, and I'm still amazed to this day, how many realizations I need to understand spiritual life, and how God is so merciful that year after year after year He's giving me different realizations that I never had before. Although at any one particular point in time, it's just a human psychology that we feel we got it. We understand. And we have that realization until generally we fail in something and get another realization. Even if I was just thinking upstate, I was just upstate and I kind of have privacy, I have time, and you know the chanties increase, the level of sattvic life increases, and how there's so much realization that comes. And when realization comes, when you see something, it's so simple that it's embarrassing you didn't know it before. And if you're sincere, that causes you a regret and a remorse as you look back on your life acting without that realization. And when you have that feeling, that's an entrance to bhakti. That feeling of humility, of foolishness separate from God. Because you don't have those experiences, you reconstruct yourself artificially as independent and all-knowing. And it creates a pride or an ego. And when you have that pride or ego, you can actually feelingly call for Krishna. You can't really have bhakti in your heart. That's one of the main things of Queen Kunti's prayers. Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madapuman Navahat Yabudaitum Vai Twam Akinshana Gotra. That unless you're Twam Akinshana Gotra, in the family of people who realize they have nothing, there's no feeling, there's no need, and there's no reality. Because reality is we're nothing and we're something at the same time. We're just an infinitesimal part of Krishna, we're nothing. We're an infinitesimal part of Krishna, we're something. And you become something when you realize that. Because that's our glory. Our glory is not in our magnitude. Our glory is not in our power. Our glory is in our consciousness. In that consciousness of love and devotion. In that simplicity of heart. So anyway, Marge Prickett, when something doesn't make sense, he doubts. Doubt is one of the 5 symptoms according to Kapila of intelligence. It means you want to understand things further. You don't doubt the authority of knowledge, you doubt your understanding of it. It's a difference. So he brings up his doubt. How can God be partial? And this is one of the realizations of the Bhagavatam, the supremacy of Krishna. And one aspect of that supremacy is that no one else is supreme. So you have Brahma Vimohan Leela. You have stories where Brahma or Shiva, etc., where they're Maya, where they're less than Krishna. But another doubt at one point I want to remember. Anyway, Marge Prickett is trying to get these components of understanding. And one other doubt, it would be, is Krishna mundane? Is he ordinary? And one of the main symptoms of, I don't want to make up a word, mundanity? One of the main symptoms of being mundane is hate and like. Because mundane, ordinary, conditioned means what? Conditioned means I want to be the enjoyer and controller, and my consciousness is cluttered by the sense of false ego. And the sense of false ego is superiority. I want to enjoy and control. That's the sense. I want to enjoy and control. And one of the necessary aspects, the two aspects of material consciousness is hate and like, partiality, based on control. We like someone based on our superiority. For example, codependence. We like someone because they increase our superiority. We rub elbows, high class, based on superior, or we hate, envy. We bring people down. So that kind of consciousness of impartiality. Like I gave the example, and where's my phone to just keep time? Because I just want to.
Oh, it's 7:39. I don't know where you're.
Okay, I got it. I guess. I gave the example of a parent. A good parent is impartial. They'll treat every child the same according to the circumstance. Every child that's obedient will get one type of response based on loving them. One child who's disobedient will get another response. So even if one child is being dealt with differently, they're actually being dealt with equally, because any child that would be disobedient would be dealt with, because it's all love. It's all love, but there's no partiality based on ego. So anytime there's this hate and like, there's a question of the person's spirituality. You know, friends and enemies. A spiritual person, he's not filled with enemies. I don't like these people because of this, etc. He's equal to everyone. He may avoid someone who causes harm, but he's the well-wisher of everyone. Suryadam Sarva Dehnam. He's the friend of everyone. So Marge Prickett raises this point, and Sukadeva Goswami, to clear this point for Marge Prickett and everyone, does it through illustrating a story. The story to show that God is impartial. And that's the story of the Rajasuya sacrifice, where Krishna is, somehow they have to decide who's the top person. Somehow Krishna's name comes up. Shishupal, who's envious of Krishna since he's born, objects. He blasphemes Krishna, and through Krishna with his Sudarshana chakra cuts off his head. And then Maharaj Yudhisthira is watching in the assembly. Somehow the light of consciousness can be seen coming from Shishupal's body, merges back into Krishna's body, and attains mukti, or liberation. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit brings up the same question that Maharaj Yudhisthira brings up the same question that Maharaj Parikshit did. But in another way, he brings it up from the other. How is this possible? How is this possible that such a demon got liberation? So he'll have to explain how Krishna is impartial. And he does it. So when that question is asked by Maharaj Parikshit to Narada Muni answers that question by telling this story of Jai and Vijay in their manifestations as demons and how they all achieve liberation. That Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. The Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. And that doesn't contradict the verse, Samaham sarvabhuteshu name dvesha, and is, I don't hate it all, but I favor my devotees. Because he'll favor anyone who becomes his devotee. He's really impartial. Yeyata mam papadyante tamstataiva bhajamim. As someone surrenders to me, I reward them accordingly. So we go into this whole story of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyaksha is killed. Hiranyakashipu becomes angry. And he begins to tell the story of Hiranyakashipu, how he became angry. And in that story of him become angry, he briefly mentions, and he had this very, very saintly son who had all good qualities, and he was inimical to him. So again, the mind went, if he was so good, how can he be inimical to him? And then the whole story is told. So the foundational principle of the story is to show how the Supreme Lord is beyond this material consciousness, icha, dvesha, samutena, this duality of desire and hate. He's beyond this. That's the foundation. But within that, there's so much Bhav, there's so much philosophy. There's even Raganuga Bhakti is even in this story. Because one of the reasons they ask, well, how can he become liberated, is because you become purified by focusing your mind on Krishna. And an emotional connection to an object is the deepest absorption. So then there's the verses that are given at the beginning by Narada in the last thing, even by Shishupal, by his envy, and Kamsa by his fear, and this person by that. Because of that connection, they remembered Krishna. Very interesting point, but King Vena went to hell. So why did King Vena go to hell? Because he hated God in the way that he denied God. They hated God in the way that they thought of God. So it's a big difference. So don't think I can hate God and I'll go back to Godhead. Because if you hate God, all that'll happen is you'll forget God. Because this was Jai and Vijay. These were his intimate associates. So now, we're talking about, in the story, Hiranyakashipu's revenge. What he wants to do is he wants to destroy society. And the way he wants to destroy society is somehow he wants to kill Vishnu. So he realizes that the saintly people are completely maintained by Vishnu. Yagyavai Vishnu, that everything comes from sacrifice to God. You kill God, then and not only do that, but destroy the whole system. And that's what's mentioned here. They say go wherever this Varnashram system is, the cows and the Brahmins. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanitaya Cha Jagaritaya Krishnaya. Krishna loves the cows and the Brahmins. It's just so amazing, New York is so crowded. I go upstate, you just go out of New York, you just go like 15 miles, you're outside of New York City or something. And it's just and it's just, no one lives. It's just land and land and more land and more land. You know, a little town here, a little town there, land and land. Can you imagine if people were pious? You can just let all the cows just wander in all this grass and greenery. You can have unlimited cows, actually. You wouldn't have this economic problem that it's so hard to maintain cows. You just let them graze. I think that's what they did. Because people love cows, you can just let them graze. So you can increase the cow population. I know nothing about these things. Here I am, an expert in the subject, but I'm speculating. You can increase the cow population. That's because there's just so much land. Let them graze. And the cows are just so dear to Krishna because they represent the mother. The mother in the proper society represents giving. Giving. Krishna loves people that are giving. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita he says, there's no one as dear to me as those who give his message. We love people who are giving. And we well wish people, but don't like them, who are selfish, who are narcissistic, who see the world through their own desires. It's so nice to be with a person who's giving. The cows are so giving. And I described once before the amazing thing. Komarupa told me this. There's an engineering school near where I live called RPI. I just can't pronounce it.
Oh, Rensselaer Polytechnic.
Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, very high engineering institute. Scientist is isolating a bacteria in cow dung that's a natural antidepressant. So if you just have cows and cow dung and put the water of cow dung and smear it over the house, people are blissful. The whole culture, everything. And so to destroy that culture and cut trees, you can think even flooding, when there's a lot of trees, they absorb all the water. Not only that, they keep the water in the ground so it doesn't evaporate. So when you have a lot of trees, the land is more fertile. And that's why the tree is given its tolerance, because the tree also is giving. And it's giving shade, it's giving fruit. I was reading in this incredible book, the second volume of Chasing the Rhinos with the Swami, that when their propeller plane arrived in Egypt, and they had to wait outside, there was no shade. They were looking for trees. The shade of a tree, the fruits of a tree, giving. But people just cut it and there's no protest. So, and I know in South America, we're buying a new piece of land, and we have one piece of land. The new land is ideal in every way, but it doesn't have the trees that we have. Those big trees, they just create atmosphere. And from sun and from shade, it just creates atmosphere. Now, so this is just a point. You destroy what? And where the Vedas are studied in terms of Varnashram principles, what a university was is not what it is today. And therefore, they have no life, the modern universities. The humanities are useless because people get out with degrees in humanities, millennials, they can't get jobs. But previously, that's what a university was. What a university was, it became so degraded. It became a trade school. Then they became teachers' colleges. They were all teachers' colleges. You had to be a teacher. You needed it, you know. It's an inflated high school. It has like, you just become in debt. So what a university was, it was the one institution in society that preserved the values of every other aspect of society. That's what a university was. So it may have had so many subjects, from Ayurveda, sociology, literature, etc. But it was the one thing that preserved the culture, preserved the values. The values of culture that maintain a society. Because what is culture? Culture means the environment where you can have something grow to its objective. So there was a culture of spirituality. There was medical science, and there was literature, and there was drama, and there was military. There was so many things. But they were all related with the objective and goal of life, which was to cultivate the soul in devotion and love. So the university, that's what the university was. So here, the Vedas are studied, so destroy that. Destroy. See, the thing about the Brahmins that was so powerful is that they were detached, and therefore they can speak the truth. They cannot be compromised because they're detached. If you're not detached, you can be shut up by what people can, what people in power can take away from you. They'll take away your grants, they'll take away, and therefore modern research becomes perverted by that. Because there's people in power that want certain objectives. And therefore, the first thing a dictatorship does is control the media and control the universities. They have to control them. And take away free speech. That's the first thing they do. Take away free speech. Because people then can't speak the truth. And therefore, you can dumb down society. There's one person who won, Rati, I still don't have time. What is it?
7:54.
Okay. There was one person who, he won the Teacher of the Year award in New York twice. And then he realized what modern education was. The factory system of education, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth, it was actually designed by Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and someone else. I forgot, the four biggest industrialists. They made a think tank, how we can have an educational system that supports the Industrial Revolution. Not we can have an educational system that builds character and preserves values of society. So, and just, so I'll just finish just with some kind of realizations I had in relationship to this. So when I was upstate, so I told you, I'm you know, there's purification, and when purification comes, you can see yourself clearly. So you see your weaknesses, then you get realizations, understandings you didn't have before that are so simple, but looking back, applied on your life, you kind of feel regretful. Why I didn't have, you know, I was ignorant, and so many mistakes are made. And where am I at now in terms of my devotion? So you're getting some real feelings of spirituality, and you're reflecting, therefore, on what's important. So this was really on my mind. When someone said, had a nice train ride, this was on my mind. So I come in the train, I come to Penn Station, there's thousands of people, I look around, what am I doing here? And then there's compassion. Because people just don't have knowledge. Where are they going, and what is this for? What is this whole thing for? Prabhupada was against industrialization. You wanted an agrarian-based society. It was just so much. It was society. It was cultured, but this industrialization, Prabhupada called it dungeons of demons, that destroy the finer sentiments of people's brains. And just looking at it, like, what is it all for? Where are people going? What is their objectives? What is their goals? And then looking at all the various identities which represent how people think they can enjoy how people think they can get enjoy and control. A ripped dungarees, jeans. No one uses my languages anymore. We call them dungarees. Jeans, right? Jeans. We call them dungarees. I don't know. You never heard that word?
No.
I'm here in Brooklyn on a time warp here. We call them dungarees. That's what we called them. Dungarees. I don't know if that is the cow or not. But I was looking at the people and just the identities that people are assuming. And when you have an identity that is not congruent with who you are, there's difficulty. They talk about how it's such a challenge for people who are transgender. It's such a struggle in their life, wishing they were something that they are not by their biology or something like that. But it's just the identity challenge of people. If you have the wrong identity, then you know there's always going to be this tension and dissatisfaction. So people are trying to find the right identity. That's why there's nothing more important than self-realization. Self-realization means to find your identity. And then I got to go to the Harinam and my famous journeys on the Q train and looking at all the people on the Q train and just seeing that people generally are not happy, and then thinking, what are their problems? And then understanding it's all spiritual. Because someone has a financial problem, someone has a health problem. But here's a rich person sitting next to me, or here's a person that's healthy. They're also not happy. So understanding that the problem is really not external. It's only the external related to the consciousness. It's the consciousness that's the problem. And then going on the Harinam, and always see this, children will stop, little babies will stop, and they'll stare at the kirtan. And generally mothers, to satisfy their kids who would never stop, are really happy because their kid's watching this. Otherwise they'd be looking at the Harinam and say, what's this freaky thing going on? You know? Oh, now they're really happy. Their child is looking at it. And this little child was just looking at it and looking at it and looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. And then I thought, this really exemplifies what bhakti is. Because bhakti is almost removing the things we have added that prejudice against the truth. Why are all these so-called intelligent, sophisticated people walking by? Because it's something that's been covering their true self. When you have a child who is innocent, it's like an advantage that he wasn't educated. It's advantage he didn't get older. It's almost like the whole society is meant to ruin someone and put a barrier between their soul and God. Of course, there were ecstasies in Harinam. There was some Muslim following Ramadan with a little cap and his wife all covered, getting a Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, and then they took a picture of him with the Arabic Bhagavad Gita.
8 o'clock.
Okay, I keep my time. Thank you all for coming. We will again have class tomorrow. I'll pick a verse from the 3rd chapter.